I'm sitting down having a chat with Bruce McIver, immediate past president of the LNP and a successful company director. Now, at the moment, you're on the board of directors for Australia Post. What other companies are you helping out with?
I've got my own private companies as well, and I'm on the board of CBIC here in Brisbane.
What do they do?
Property.
Okay.
And then I'm also involved with the railway group.
Okay. So, economic theory. Let's talk economics. We could go indulging my intellectual curiosities, just free market versus protectionism, or maybe we can talk about something more useful for the average viewer, which would be how to understand government budgets and how to not be victim to the smoke and mirrors of spending promises 10 years and 20 years into the future.
Well, I think there's one great difference between my side of politics and the other side of politics, Labor and Greens. And I go back to a very successful president of the United States, Ronald Reagan. And Ronald had this saying where he said, the other side, Labor, and in our case, Labor and the Greens, if someone's successful, they tax that person or that issue. If they're still successful, they'll regulate that person or that issue. And when they're unsuccessful, they'll find a way to subsidise it. Now, we're different. My side of politics is very different. We believe that reward for effort is extremely important, that someone does something, puts an effort into something, and they should get a reward for it and then be able to keep it. Don't believe that government should be just there to pick up the pieces when people do have the full on hard times. Whereas Labor believe that they should be there for all time. Anyone that's successful, let's find out why, and as I said, apply the Ronald Reagan theory to them.
Now, I'm interested in, I wonder how you're going to answer this with your political hat or your business hat, or if the two can coincide. What do you think the effect is of, speaking of business disincentives and taxing success, what do you think the effect is of payroll tax on real employment numbers in Australia and the average state?
I don't know whether it has much of an effect at all. In my business, when I was in business, I paid a lot of payroll tax, but it didn't deter me from employing one extra person, as an example. I just treated it as a part of the cost of doing business at the level I was at. Now, everyone hates paying tax, but if payroll tax goes, something else will go up. So I believe in equity would be more appropriate for me, making sure that the right people are paying the right amount of tax.
I challenge the theory that something else will go up. I think, and this is just uneducated, unexperienced economic theory from Dave Pellowe, but I think if we had a payroll rebate, government revenues would go up. If we actively promoted and incentivised the creation of more taxpayers, there would be more tax revenue. Obviously, you can't just give away endless amounts of money, but instead of taking money out of somebody's pocket when they employ somebody, we said, look, if we get $100 tax from this person because you've increased productivity in the economy, then we can maybe give you a $50 break. We're $50 better off, we've got less welfare to pay, and we've got more money in the economy and more productivity at the same time.
Well, there's two big issues against that. One is our state debt. I don't think Queensland can give too many breaks to anyone at the moment with the debt the way it is, because we need infrastructure, we need a lot of spending on capital, and we've got this debt over our heads. And the second one, I'd say, is the federal level. We have the Senate just blocks everything, so you can't. Blocks most things. I shouldn't say everything. Blocks most things, and I don't think you can change that. But giving incentives are given out to employ people today. I don't think it makes much of a difference to the employment at all. I'd rather see the incentives cut off and lower the tax, lower the payroll tax as an example. personally, but I'm not a Treasury boffin, so they have their reasons for recommending to governments that
So in those two objections, those are pragmatic obstacles to perhaps implementing Dave Pellowe's economic theory, but it doesn't sound like you had any theoretical objections to what I propose might work. The feasibility of the Senate and the current debt climate where we can't take a risk with
David, if you work those two major issues out, one in state, one in federal, then you'd look at the whole tax system. Because I think the whole tax system, both the state and federal level, who taxes what, it needs to all be reviewed. But see, you can't. I know the coalition government federally tried to look at all the tax system when Malcolm became Prime Minister, and the states didn't want. One wanted GST changes, another one didn't. We were all over the place. So we've got to have a really root and branch look at the whole tax system. But the first thing's got to be fixed is some way to put it into place, and that's starting with the Senate. Revising the Senate. You've got to be very careful.
Isn't that up to the population to?
Well, it's constitutional change.
How do you think? In what way would you change the Senate?
I wouldn't like to comment here in 5-minute video how I'd change the Senate. But one thing you've got to bear in mind all the time when you're talking about change to structure in the Constitution is the unintended consequences that can occur from that. So we've got to be very
That's something
careful.
I think the right side of politics is much more prone to do carefully, is not always, but is to consider the long-term consequences as opposed to the bleeding heart reflexes.
You have to. It's a bit like the climate change issue, the reaction. I'm a climate change skeptic because, and I said that last weekend at the LNP convention from the floor, debating an issue because the Weather Bureau can't tell us what the temperature will be in 2 weeks. How are they going to tell us in 100 years?
Absolutely.
There's no accountability
and
there.
Every proposed action has adverse consequences on people. It's not only costing electricity prices, it's costing lives subsequently. People not wanting to turn their heaters on at home, and more people die from cooling than they do from a hot summer, statistically. But it's also costing jobs. Companies are shutting down because their electricity bills are, like the average person, if you want to do something for the environment, are you prepared to give up your job to possibly change the temperature by 1,000% of a degree?
But what's it how do we know that that's in fact true?
And that's not even true, is it?
I go back, and I've said this from the platform at LNP convention. My business, I had road trains, and one of the areas I had a lot of road trains run through was between Quilpie and Windora. And if you go from Quilpie to Windora, there's a sheep property, actually a big sheep property called Thurlungra. And on Thurlungra, on the edge of the bitumen road, you can see as you drive past, there's sand hills, and they're probably about 60 feet high. And they're covered in trees, but they're sand. Now they've been blown up in big droughts. Not in white man in this country. I don't even know what the Aboriginals were when they were blown up. But the climate is always changing, whether it's man-made or I don't believe it's man-made. I don't believe at all it's man-made.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that the cost of electricity today is the biggest single issue, and will be, in my opinion, in the state election, the biggest single issue. And if you want all this renewable, well, you're going to have to pay for it. And if you can't pay, if we're suffering jobs and people can't keep the heater on, well, I don't think that's right.
Do you think electricity would be cheaper if it was entirely privatised?
We missed a golden opportunity in 2015. The LNP policy by Campbell at that time was to privatise the power generation, the coal-fired power generations. I said at a party meeting a couple of months later when we were reviewing that election that we probably missed a golden opportunity because in 50 years' time those power stations wouldn't be worth very much. And the comment was made back to me by someone who knew from the floor of the meeting, try 5 years. So we as a state missed a valuable opportunity.
I agree.
Because and those power stations I'm talking about are the old ones. I think we need new coal-fired power stations, one in North Queensland, one in South Queensland, and if we have a percentage of renewable, keep it about the percentage that it is now, and let's settle things down for a while and keep power prices from rising for a period. I think we need some stability in the market.
The current policy volatility around electricity and power generation because of climate change alarmism is such that no sane investor would build a coal-powered fire station in Australia. I think they're unfortunately going to have to be government built.
You're probably right, but if an investor had a long-term written contract for takeoff of supply, I think you'd attract private investment then.
There are solutions for that. Good. Excellent. All right, well, let's continue the conversation very soon in the next segment.
Okay.
Thanks for watching. If you really enjoyed that video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Have a look at this great video next, and check out the website for even more interesting articles and episodes later.